Good morning. My name is Scott Forcino. I am an associate broker with eXp Realty. I founded PlugIntro.com so that members of the real estate industry can meet who they should know, can be local famous, and they can gain more and better referral partners. I have with me today Derek Hall, a friend, a superstar professional with a long history in residential real estate and in New York City. And he's gone on to form a fantastic school of his own, and this is his chance to let us know more about it. So Derek, thank you for being here. Good morning.
Thank you for having me, Scott. I really appreciate it. I am Derek, the founder and president of Charter Real Estate School. Prior to starting the school, we're about 6 years into operation now. Before that, I had 13 years with PropertyShark.com, where I was the trainer. I organized all their events. I even ran the school that we had there for some time as well. So I'm a little familiar when it comes to data, technology, and the industry as a whole. I just love it here, and I'm really happy to have the school to be able to actually teach agents the things that, you're all about meet who you should know. I'm all about learn what you should know. And so that's really what it boils down to. Like, I don't feel like agents should have to learn on the job if getting education is part of the job. So that's what I'm here for.
That's interesting. So you want brand new people looking for license and then people with their continuing education.
Yes. So because of my time in the industry, I focused on continuing education in the beginning because I already had the contacts. For me, it was a lot easier to find the people I already knew. I reached out to my network, was able to provide value for them right off the bat. And then actually it was during the pandemic that I started doing the licensing. And that's been a lot of fun. It's a lot more work. But once you find the students, once you get the core in there, you bring them in, you have to hold their hand a lot. But I'm actually very hands-on when it comes to that. So like, I help my agents find their brokerage. I don't just kind of like throw them to the wolves where whoever pays me gets the new agents. I genuinely talk to them about how they want to work, what's the best environment for them, and then introduce them to brokers that provide that kind of environment. Because I feel like a lot of the times people, as you know, the industry is merciless. Most people don't last 5 years. There's a huge turnover rate. And I feel like a lot of that has to do with getting into the wrong situation. You don't go to a broker that supports you the way you need to be supported. You may be inclined to feel like the problem is you and not the situation. So I really try to work with new agents to make sure they get into an environment that works for them. And I love nothing more than watching the agents that I work with thrive. When I hear back from the brokers, oh, I love this person, send me more. When I see them closing deals, I even post on my Instagram when my agents close deals. It's just, I feel like a proud dad sometimes, but I really have come to enjoy that part of this job as well.
You know what? I got to tell you, I'm ignorant about that. I did not even know that schools had any kind of quote unquote placement. Is that your invention or is that done?
Well, traditionally what will happen is the school will monetize brokers, right? Because brokerage, the name of the game is having more agents. When you don't have to pay your staff, you have salesmen coming in, working under you basically for free, and you get money off of their labor. All brokers want to have more people. So generally what they'll do is they'll pay whatever fee a school asks them to be able to speak to the agents, try to sway the agents to their brokerage. But for me, my situation is that doesn't really lead to anything that's going to be great, because you don't know anything about what you really want. No one asks you to think about it. You're like, oh, that guy sounds good. And that guy could be a schmuck who does a really good presentation, right? And I'm not trying to say any particular broker is a schmuck, but you just don't know what kind of relationship you'd actually have with someone who just paid the school for the opportunity to talk to you. And some of these schools might even just say, oh, well, they paid me, so why don't you go to that one, But for me, I feel like that's a disservice. If I can, I want to do as much as I can to put the agents in a position to thrive from the beginning. So yeah, I guess you could say that's my.
That's powerful. I've heard the expression, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So if you're looking for their success, I know there are a lot of schools out there to give you some licensure or some credits, but I mean, that's a real distinguishing factor for your school.
Absolutely. And I think, I have people that come back. I know for a fact they've already gotten their 22 hours and plus, but they come back because they actually learned something. I treat my classes kind of like events. So, it's sort of like a big deal because it's a topic that you hadn't heard of before. And a lot of times, I've got classes on self-defense, classes on divorce and real estate, things that you only learn if you actually go through it, again, learning on the job. So I want to present that information to the industry beforehand, because why not know it so you're prepared when it comes instead of making the mistakes on your own. So I genuinely do want everybody to thrive. I want everybody to do well. And if I can be the catalyst for that, if I can support that growth, yay for me, I feel good. And then people will come back for that too. It's like, you actually taught me something. I learned something from you. Teach me more. And so it really does kind of work in a very positive way. I always, in the beginning, I used to relate it to that scene in Malcolm X, when he first met Elijah Muhammad, and he talks about the dirty water and the clean water. So for
Yes.
me, it's like the dirty water is the way it was. You had to get credits, just take this BS and go on about your day. But that clean water is an actual education, things that can actually benefit you in your business. And that's what I wanted to offer.
Well, I know that agents treat credits within their career as a commodity, and they'll go here. I mean, there's a lunch and learn. Oh, I'll grab 2.5 hours, and they're here. Where I would imagine the challenge is to retain the students and have them for life. And if you're not doing anything, then why wouldn't they go to grab some credits, here, there, online, all that, right? I mean, that's how you.
And that's how I built my business, on the premise that if no one else is offering any real value, and that's again why I focused on the CE. I knew that there was a huge pool of people that didn't care where they were getting their credits from because they weren't necessarily good. So I knew that if I went to them and offered them something good, I may not get everybody, but there's definitely going to be people that appreciate it and will come back for the actual, for the real, for the education. And that's what I built my business on, the fact that the schools weren't really catering to the growth of the agents. They were saying, well, you need this, here it is. And that wasn't the take that I took.
Sure. I mean, it doesn't even, if I'm hearing you, it doesn't even mean that there's any social connection or camaraderie where you might really dig being with the same people and connected to the people that you started with.
And even related to that, right? Like, because I've noticed that, because I started doing my pre-licensing during the pandemic where we had to do it virtually, a lot of people were asking, can we do it in person? Because they feel like they learn better in person, which I get. But then there's also just a matter of being in the classroom, right? Everybody in that class is your frenemy, right? They're all going to be rival agents, but there's something to be said for creating those relationships in the pre-licensing phase. But then also for me, there is that aspect of networking that's in my classes as well, because all of my classes are taught by professionals. So, I mean, teachers are great. I consider myself a teacher. I work with some teachers, but for the most part, the people that teach are working professionals. So you're networking just by being in the class. So if I've got a class on 1031 exchanges and you don't know anything about it and something comes across your plate, you know who to call. That instructor who taught you. Same thing when it comes to anything. I work with attorneys, I work with lenders, I work with title insurance companies, I work with, home inspectors. And the idea is that if you're learning from someone who's actually knowledgeable because they're doing it, you're going to work with that person and vice versa. So everybody gets a little bit more from the experience.
Sure, and those friendships that are formed can guide people which companies they join and even which market they may want to serve. And that's so much value there because, without exposure, what are you going to do?
Exactly. And it's funny, I actually did, after one of my virtual classes, we were able to meet. We did a get together. It was in a lender's office. I brought in a photographer to do their headshot. So again, it's like, hey, come out, meet the students you saw in class, actually meet them, get your headshot done, meet some people in the industry, and that'll kind of give you the leg up. And it was really interesting to see them actually connect because, even though it was on Zoom, they could see each other. They did, kind of understand how each other moved based on the questions they asked. And it was really kind of nice to see people like, oh, hey, how you doing? You would think they were actual friends, that they had connected in some way before. So I do like that there was, even during the pandemic, there was that opportunity for people to connect with others.
Well, yes, they're maybe not a real friend. They didn't go to each other's weddings. But the fact is, I found as you get older and more professional, the people you work with, you and I are great examples. There's so much respect and so much interest in connecting. If I talk to my real pals, I'm like, all right, it's not that cool. It's not that fun. But it really is a little different. Where you and I have like 50 of Derek's and 50 of Scott's. You get on, it's like really, you want to connect. There's so much to talk about and to share. Where the bond is this industry, which we're self-employed. So you say that they're really competitors. But I will tell you, based on where we are in the world, we're not in a tiny town of Wisconsin. Your students are
Right.
so spread out that they may never compete. They're much more
That's true.
colleagues, and that, you know, we're not, again, we're here. It's like everyone everywhere. So if someone's in Queens and someone's somewhere else, even if you're in 2 neighborhoods away in Queens, you're never going to ever compete.
Yeah. And that
So
actually was a huge benefit during the pandemic because we were doing it on Zoom. You had that. I had people that were in the same class from the Bronx, Manhattan. Actually, I had people from Manhattan in those classes, Bronx, Queens, and Long Island. So they're all hearing the same information. And even my CE classes, I've got people in my CE classes that were in Buffalo, way up where I went to college in, tiny Canton, New York, and that was really kind of a beautiful thing to have that kind of a net and really be able to reach out and help people in places that I wouldn't have been able to if I was just married to the one location. So that kind of reach has been really, really interesting to have.
yeah, and you mentioned reach. I mean, COVID coincided with the rise of this Zoom culture, which, Zoom, I was one of the few people that used Zoom before COVID. A lot of people didn't. I just did it for internal meetings, but still it became, the ubiquitous solution. And it was EXP
Like I've
Realty,
used everything
our hashtag
before
was,
Zoom, but not Zoom. Like I used, I remember what Microsoft is what we used when I was a Property Shark, and then in my personal life we use Skype. So like Zoom is not
all
new by
right.
any stretch of the imagination, but for whatever reason they were able to key in during the pandemic,
Well,
and I
because
told her you were
there's a
using that.
need.
Right.
There was a need, so they used this thing that people use. It was also, families use Zoom to connect for communication. So they
I
used
was
this
doing that
thing,
with
and
Skype years ago. That's what I find interesting is that like people, Skype was a big company. That's not a new thing. I remember ESPN was Skyping people in and stuff as well. But for whatever reason, all those older platforms didn't cross the line. So, good
there
for you.
wasn't
Chose the winner.
there wasn't the need. So I used to Skype people from across the world, but
Right.
at the time, I think Skype was really on your desktop or your laptop. It wasn't really a phone app, so that made it annoying right there.
That's true. That's a good point.
So everything became mobile, everything became app based, everything became so common. Plus, on top of that, when COVID happened, people were reaching for ways to connect. So before you would utilize the software, now you're enthusiastically adopting it. We had people in their 80s, like people I know, using Zoom. I couldn't believe it.
Absolutely.
Right,
Absolutely.
and
The
that's where
user experience is quite good Zoom. Yeah.
EXP was saying we're built for this because people are fumbling with privacy breaches on Zoom, and we had this metaverse years before people heard of the word metaverse, and it was really, really compelling. But that said, before you and I have ever spoken, is there any element of business training? I mean, can they get out? I mean, I know they hear from lawyers, but how to be a better broker, how to actually get in front of clients?
Yeah. So when it comes to the continuing education, the Department of State's not too big on the business side, right? Like they don't care about marketing, they don't care about sales. They're not going to give you credit for that. They want everything's got to be like transactional related to the industry serving clients and things like that. So when it comes to the CE classes, I can squeeze that into classes for sure, but for that kind of training, I do my own event. So actually, I'm planning an event right now for the end of June. I'm calling it BYOB, Build Your Own Business, where I've got 6 presenters who are going to talk about ways that you can increase your business, through things like organization, make sure you get an LLC, but then also relationships with other people. I've got an insurance guy who will talk to you about having an insurance person sit in your office. Another friend of mine who's an agent who's also a property manager, he's a big proponent of real estate agents being property managers also. So it's ways that you can build your business by what you're doing and doing more professionally, but then also things you can add to your business to be more entrepreneurial, to kind of grow yourself in different ways as well. So I'd use the events for that. And I think of that more like I don't know if you're familiar with the Earn Your Leisure guys. Those guys, they're talking out to the public. but this is specific to the industry. And I really love how this can grow when I can bring in new speakers, talk about new technology. You know me, I love technology. So when I can talk about the new technologies and just the new ways that people can build better mousetraps in their industry and be more entrepreneurial, because like you said, every agent is a business owner, whether they realize it or not. So with the BYOB, I want people to think of themselves more as entrepreneurs.
Yeah, for sure. And that means doing something different than others are doing. There has to be a way, because unfortunately, look what's happened with something like Zillow. They have completely commoditized agents.
Yep.
You are a buyer, it's midnight, you're wearing pajamas, you're on an iPad, and you press a realtor's face, and the realtor does not know you or the property. So, I mean, there can't be inherent value. It's just a connection. So,
Yeah.
you know, there's no trust there. I mean, that's the technology and the financial investors and Wall Street backing has put all their eggs in the basket of consumers going directly to providers, where, you know,
Yeah.
you could benefit by real estate company brokers directing their agents to you.
Absolutely. And so like I try to create relationships with brokerages as well, especially again, when I going back to what I do with my pre-licensing, because I'm talking with the agents and sending them to the brokers, I actually do the introduction myself. Because again, those brokers are people I have relationships with. So I send a direct email to the broker, CCing my new student with the introduction saying, this is the student, this is what they are, they're bilingual, they're from this culture, they bring whatever assets to the table, and they want to work with you. I'll do that with 5 to 7 brokers. And so they're all seeing what value I'm bringing in terms of actually introducing them to potential agents. And then on top of that, offering them the continuing education to actually get their agents better trained so they don't have to worry about counseling them again through a situation as it comes up. They're getting their agents trained and they don't have to put forth the effort. So I kind of commoditize the agents in that way as well, because my classes are sponsored. So I can go to brokers and say, hey, you can get free CE training, CE credits and training for your agents, and you're going to have a better situation, and it'll be courtesy of, you know, this title company or, you know, this insurance company and things like that. So I do a little bit of that, but again, it's still in service of the agents as well.
That's good, because I don't think people do that routinely either. Those are nice distinguishing factors that you utilize. Interesting. So I
Yeah.
know there's the June 15th event, which is coming up. Could you tell us about that?
Yes, so that's an event that I'm doing in Long Island. That's going to be in Melville at this place. I think it was a Retro Cafe. I think they might have just changed the name, but I think Retro Cafe is the new name. That's going to be with a lender that I'm good friends with, a guy named Artie, you might know. And he's actually going to be, he and a couple of his colleagues are going to be teaching a class on what we call creative financing. It's, you know, think of it as financing 201. You know, it's all the things that aren't the basics. You know, I think everybody knows of the class introduction to real estate financing, mortgage 101, that type of thing. This is the next level up, where agents can learn about things like seller financing and hard money and 203K loans and things like that. And then also some special loan products that are available from this bank. They'll get credit for it, and then also get a good cheeseburger from the Retro Cafe as well. So really, again, very social, but then also very educational at the same time.